Hi, it's John Reed of Diginomica, Community Live Financial Force, fresh off the Keynote stage. Tiffani, Bova, and Geoffrey Moore, how'd it go?
Good to be here. It was fun.
Do all right? Standing ovations, all that stuff?
Oh yeah, of course.
Nice. Sorry about the construction noise, folks. Things were a little off the hook last night. Let's just leave it at that.
Repairs going on.
Repairs were necessary. So I know that disruption is a topic that you've danced around a little bit, Geoffrey, and it's a little bit different when it comes to professional services and finance people. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, a lot of the disruption we're talking about now is it's the age of the customer, right? And so you think about sales and service and marketing are at the front lines. But when you re-engineer your relationship with a customer, there's no new norm, there's no new normal. And so professional services are always required to come in and build that initial connection by hand. Now, over time, that connection gets replaced with automated services, but initially it has to be negotiated politically, socially, you know, sort of in the situation. So professional services have gone from being the guys who implement our products to really the troops that we land on the beach before our products even get there to help to make it possible. Yeah, and then we were talking about the finance function. So historically in the supply chain world, finance was kind of king. In the age of the customer, finance now has to be much more adaptable. And so the pressure on the back office to be more adaptive to the front office's demands, because we're competing for customers, very tough, and finance has got to step up to that.
And a lot of finance people maybe not quite ready for that, but
well, it's hard to feel. It's hard to have been king. That's a hard one.
And for people that saw the keynote, we're going to give them some content that they didn't get, which has to do with how organizations need to change. Tell us about that.
Well, the Zone to Win book is the latest book, and basically it's about how can an organization both pursue its existing legacy lines of business, because there's still 5 to 10 to 15 years of life in that, but at the same time catch on to these new waves so that they cannot be left behind. And so the zoning model just says, look, acknowledge that there are different areas of interest in your company that have different rules, different protocols. The people who are managing the current business have very different issues than the people who are doing the next generation stuff. Most people know to keep them separate. The support functions are basically for your historical business. You loan a little bit to the incubation innovation group, but not much. And those three groups each have to understand that the other two groups have very different values and they'll work together. And then the last thing is, when you go to make a big shift, and eventually the pressure of the changes will force you to do that, we have this fourth zone called the transformation zone, and that's when the CEO and the exec team have to step in and say, guys, we are rearranging the deck chairs, and everybody has to stand up and take a new position, and that's the real challenge of leadership happens then.
So how does his thinking jive with your speaking on brands getting closer to customers and stuff like that? Does it conflict or does it?
No, it's hard to sort of disagree with Geoffrey Moore, but you know, I would say yes and.
Come on,
have you met Marie?
Right, the women that run his life is not. I'm not one of them. But I would say this. I would say you know, the professional services firms over time have always been very keen and connected to the customer, because they're selling themselves, right? And they're selling a service. It isn't a product in that way. And so that ability for professional services firms to now understand the power of the influence of their customers advocating on their behalf, and actually going out and sort of telling other companies like them that this is a great company to work with and for, used to be sort of word of mouth very prescriptively. And now it happens socially so quickly. And so, you know, it's ripe for, you know, especially in the finance world, where it has been sort of this back office, is how do you get out in front of that and say, you know, we want to be known for the experience our brand brings to our clients, and that we really care about their success, and we're not just here to sell them something from a professional services standpoint, that we really do want them to be successful, you know, using our services. And so getting out of their office and out of the four walls and going and spending time with customers, not just in delivery or architecting, but really in understanding their business, I think is key.
Let me just piggyback on that, because I saw in the paper today, Amazon now has a new shopping service. They will send you 3 to 15 pieces of clothing and not charge your account. You try on at home and you send it back. Now that's a cool offer for a consumer, right? But think what the finance function has to do in order to make that offer work. So all of a sudden, You did what? and returns, you mean, so now the return is the way when I signal the sale as opposed to the purchase? It's just a world where you have to make many more adaptations than you ever had to in the past.
Well, and you could even, it was just a couple of days ago where Best Buy did the same thing, made an announcement that now you can try technology.
Try before you buy.
Try before you buy. Same thing, to try to figure out, those open boxes and how they sell that. And that's another finance of you're now shipping out an asset that could be expensive, and then saying if someone doesn't like it, it comes back, and what's the depreciation on that, and how do you do it? So once again, pivoting towards that customer means all kinds of things when the sales guy or the marketing guy comes up with a new idea, and then finance has to figure out how to execute it.
It's true.
I think what I struggle with a little bit, I talked with a vendor recently who said, well, what's changing for us around services is that our clients want us to have skin in the game. And so the words partner come to mind, right? So instead of selling to, partnering with, but a lot of it to me is rhetoric at this point, because how do you prove that you mean it, that you're changing those relationships and how you go to market?
So one thing I think is interesting, I can remember in the 90s where you sold products and services together, you tried to productize the service. I mean, literally, HP would have an empty box in a store that was a service pack that you could buy. It was a contract, but they were productizing the service. Today, it's the opposite. Today, we are servicizing the product. Nobody actually wants to buy. We're not going to buy a car. We're going to buy a ride. We're not going to buy, that kind of stuff. And so all of a sudden, people are going. And that's how you know if I have skin in the game. Because if you sell me your product as a service, until I get the service, I don't pay you.
Right.
Whereas if the other way around, as soon as I pay for the product, you can say, I'm out of here.
Right.
And by the way, tech was great at doing that.
And if you don't live up to the service, then I'm going to pull up stakes.
Yeah, I'm just not going to pay you. You don't get paid until the service is done.
And you have to earn it month after month after month after
Yes.
month, right? It used to be, it was a 3-year, 5-year contract, or a lease for a car is 2-3 years, and that's the car you have. Now, you very quickly could say, you know what, I'm going to ride in a handful of cars via rideshare. And find out what car I like, or I'm going to rent a car, or I'm going to do something. I want to live in a neighborhood. I'm going to Airbnb a neighborhood before I buy in the neighborhood. I mean, so we have these opportunities to have very different buying journeys, if you will. So I'd say, to answer your question specifically, that it isn't so much of having skin in the game as much as it is being committed to your customer's success. And so in that example of try before you buy, it's really making sure that me as the customer of Amazon or Best Buy has the best experience I can with the brand. And so it's about my success, not about your finance process. And so you have to figure out kind of how to make that
And the
work.
irony of it is, I'm sure they were getting a lot of returns anyway. So they just returned into a benefit. If you think about it, if I bought everything and have to return it, that's a burden on me. But if you gave it all to me and all I have to do is return the ones I'm not using, that's a bit, but it's the same transaction, right? It just takes some imagination.
So does things like disruption theory and blending products and services, does that resonate with your customers? Because sometimes I worry that we're kind of selling disruption and we're a little abstract. Does it resonate with customers that you talk with as well? Or?
I think there's a spectrum of customers, right? To just sort of make a blanket statement, say yes, it's resonating would be unfair. But to say no, it's not resonating would also be equally unfair. I think it's a spectrum. I think it's a spectrum both globally, right? So in parts of the world, there's a different spectrum. In highly regulated industries, it's a very different spectrum. Where the target customer is a millennial, it's a very different spectrum. I mean, so the problem is that I think it's also disrupted the segmentation we've been very comfortable with. It's a small business, it's a startup, it's a mid-size, it's an enterprise, it's a finance company, it's a government, it's public sector. Like, we very clearly have delineated these segments, and now I think that is less of a benefit. I don't know, what do you think?
The whole technology adoption life cycle, I've been sort of dining out on it for
a little bit.
Decades, yes. But the idea behind that was the early adopters are the ones who embrace disruption, and it's a relatively small percentage of any community. It's usually less than 15%. They would say, I want to get ahead of the curve, I want to go for competitive advantage. By far the majority of people are going, I just don't want to get so far behind that I lose my position. And so I think that the talk about disruption gets a little bit ethereal and frankly a little bit phony when it's like everybody should be a disruptor. Most people should never be a disruptor. What they should try to avoid being is a disruptee. And that's a different problem to solve. They're both important problems to solve, but they're different.
You don't want to get Amazon, so to speak.
Exactly. Amazon, Googled, Ubered, or it's like, it's sounding painful.
Yeah. Well,
I do want to get Googled. but that's because
Yeah,
I'm
that's a little bit
interested
different though, right?
Yes.
So before we wrap, any freelance thoughts on Amazon Whole Foods?
You're the subscriber. You spend $1,500 a month with these guys.
Did
Come
you
on.
just say that on film?
No, I didn't say that on film.
You did.
I didn't say that on film.
We just had this whole conversation about, anyway, so, at the end of the day, I would say this. I would say
It's not our whole paycheck.
it is my whole paycheck.
Nice.
When you look at retail as a category and people are saying, look, it's getting really tough. Square footage is getting tough, the market's getting tough, people are closing stores, and you see somebody, and it's not just Amazon, it could be H&M, it could be Sephora, there's all kinds of retail companies that are growing. Why are they growing and others not growing? And so I think that's what's more fascinating to me, is if you really start to deconstruct that in any way, you start to see it has a lot to do with pivoting more towards the customer, using this data and analytics to be smarter about, so did he really buy Whole Foods or did he buy the distribution and logistics of it, right? And I actually know everybody in that neighborhood who's buying from me from Amazon Fresh, and now I can be smarter about what goes into Whole Foods, and then I can do this combination between digital and storefront, which you would joke that he was so non-storefront, and now it's interesting how much storefront he's going for, where you hear storefront saying we're going all digital. And so I think it's this great combination between the two things.
I think what's interesting is that most of the ones that the examples other than Amazon who are having success by being a kind of a more exciting brand, or H&M with fashion, or Sephora with this whole makeup community, and just they have a lot of digital community kind of stuff and things like that. What's fascinating to me about Amazon is an operational excellence play, and they're taking Six Sigma, which we spent our entire life doing Six Sigma against the supply chain, and they're applying it to the delivery chain, and they're just doing it mercilessly and relentlessly and every damn day. And so no matter what they buy into, you think, well, oh my God, if they're going to Six Sigma that too? And the answer is, yeah, we are. Yeah, that's
And not everything is a winner. They're willing to take those risks and fail and move on.
There you have it, folks. Live from Financial Force. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.